Today we'll hear from 5 judicial nominees. Nancy Abudu, nominated to the 11th Circuit. Judge Michelle Childs, nominated to the D.C. Circuit. Nusrat Chowdhury, I hope I pronounced that correctly, nominated to the Eastern District of New York. Judge Anna Alba, nominated to the Eastern District of California. And Natasha Merle, nominated to the Eastern District of New York. As has been the true throughout the 117th Congress, today's slate represents a cross-section of the legal profession. We have sitting federal and state judges, civil rights attorneys, and those who spent their time in legal private practice and state administrative agencies. Several of our nominees are seasoned litigators. As such, they are advocates for their clients and the outcomes their clients seek. These nominees, like the 2 who already hold judicial office, understand the difference between the role of an advocate and a judge. I'll turn to Ranking Member Grassley for any opening remarks he might have, and then we'll turn to several of our colleagues and our guest from the House of Representatives, the Majority Whip, Congressman Clyburn. I'm sorry I didn't say hello when I came through the door. I welcome Senator Gillibrand as well. But first, a comment from Ranking Member Grassley.
I have no opening comment because we got such a busy schedule today. So
You're a great ranking member. There's no question in my mind. We have a number of colleagues joining us this morning to introduce nominees, and we're going to start. Senator Graham is not here yet to introduce Judge Childs, and we have our distinguished colleague from the House of Representatives, Representative Clyburn, to also introduce Judge Childs. Congressman Clyburn, recognizing you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for having me here today. And Mr. Ranking Member, thank you, Senator Kennedy. Good to see all of you. I've had the pleasure of serving with the chair. I was not around long enough to be here for you other 2 guys, but Senator Durbin, thank you so much for your long friendship. It's a real honor for me to be here today to speak on behalf of my fellow South Carolinian, Michelle Childs. Judge Childs was nominated to the United States District Court of South Carolina in 2010, and this August body confirmed her to that post by voice vote. During her service on the federal bench, Judge Childs has developed a reputation of respect, fairness, and exemplary temperament from all who have appeared before her. She's also highly regarded by her judicial peers, having recently completed a term as chair of the Judicial Division of the American Bar Association, and she is currently the president-elect of the Federal Judges Association, a position she was chosen for by the Article III judges from all over the country. Her achievements are great, but what people remember most about Judge Childs are her demeanor and her dedication. In other words, her incredible judicial temperament. This has not come about, as we say down in the Gullah Geechee country, just dry along so. After her father died, Judge Childs was brought to Columbia, South Carolina by her mother and raised in a working class community in a single parent household. She attended a public high school, a public university, a public law school. She worked hard and achieved accolades as high school valedictorian, the winner of the University of South Florida Outstanding Graduate Award, and she earned a master's degree in personnel and employment relations from the University of South Carolina School of Business at the same time that she earned her law degree. She went on to become the first Black woman to make partner in a major South Carolina law firm. Her distinguished work in the private sector led to appointments in the public sector. She was appointed Deputy Director of the State Department of Labor and then elevated to serve on the South Carolina Workers' Compensation Commission. The South Carolina General Assembly elected her in 2006 to serve as a South Carolina Circuit Court judge, and 2 years later, she became the chief administrative judge for the General Sessions. While she has done many extraordinary things, it is the ordinary upbringing that has helped shape her life's work and made her an example for so many young people in similar circumstances. These experiences reflect the experiences of so many Americans. Judge Childs has distinguished herself at every stage of her long career in public service, and if confirmed, I believe you can expect great things from Judge Childs on the Court of Appeals for the District Circuit as well, District of Columbia Circuit. I appreciate this opportunity and ask for your support for this outstanding nominee.
Congressman Clyburn, thank you. And of course, we understand your schedule such that you won't be able to stay with us, but it means a great deal that you would come to the other side of the rotunda and join us in this committee hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So there's a little balance. I hope Senator Gillibrand will bear with me for a moment. In the first panel is also Nancy Abudu, and I would like at this point to introduce her and then proceed with the others who are here. Senator Graham has not arrived. Ms. Abudu received her bachelor's degree from Columbia University and her JD from Tulane University School of Law. After graduating from law school, she worked in private practice briefly before serving as staff attorney on the 11th Circuit, the same court on which she has been nominated to serve. Afterwards, Ms. Abudu spent approximately 13 years as a litigator for the American Civil Liberties Union Voting Rights Project, an ACLU's Florida affiliate. There she worked on a range of matters, including felon disenfranchisement, voting rights, the First Amendment, and criminal justice. Since 2019, Ms. Abudu has worked at the Southern Poverty Law Center, helping to establish their voting rights practice group. In her role at SPLC as both deputy and legal director and director of strategic litigation, she focuses on ensuring equal access to the ballot box, as well as overseeing the organization's legal programmatic work, which includes immigrant rights, criminal justice reform, children's rights, LGBTQ rights, and others. We're going to welcome her and her family to introduce those who joined her a little bit later. I thank all their colleagues for their introductions. I see Senator Graham. Are you ready? Yes, Lindsay, say a word. Try to stick with the first panel. Senator Gillibrand, I hope you understand. Please.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Judge Michelle Childs. She's a district court judge from South Carolina who has a reputation in our state, following the law as written, being fair, having a disposition that lawyers enjoy being in front of. Judge Childs, she wears the robe well. She has an incredible story. Her father was a police officer who was killed. She came to South Carolina. She graduated from the University of South Carolina Law School, undergraduate degree from the University of South Florida. She's gotten advanced degrees in the law. And Congressman Clyburn and I have been talking about this for a very long time. And you may have read about it. The point is that Jim and I, we have different political philosophies, but we try to move forward as a state in a positive way, along with Senator Scott and our whole delegation. And I'll be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, Congressman Clyburn called me about the potential of her moving up. And as you can tell, I was all in her moving up. It was up to President Biden as to who to nominate for the Supreme Court. But this position that she is being nominated for is consequential. I think she is well qualified. I am a legal conservative. I expect her philosophy to be a bit different from mine. I expect that President Biden would nominate somebody different than maybe I would have chosen. But I can say this, that Congressman Clyburn, myself, and I think Senator Scott have a very high opinion of Judge Childs. And this is the type person that would do our state well. I think she would be a great role model for young women out there to show what is possible. And from a South Carolina point of view, I am proud to support this nomination. I think she will serve the court well. And again, Mr. Chairman, this is a tough time in which we live in. And I hope there's some encouragement for this committee that Congressman Clyburn, myself, and others in South Carolina can rally around an accomplished woman who has worn the robe well and has potential to serve at the highest level of the judiciary and is incredibly gifted, smart, but has a disposition to the extent that if I had a case and I were before her, I would be pleased that she was the judge presiding over my fate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Graham. We have several others here to introduce our nominees in the second panel, and I recognize first Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all the members of the Judiciary Committee. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Natasha Merle, nominee for the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. I was proud to recommend her to the President, and I hope she will receive a swift confirmation. Ms. Merle currently serves as the Deputy Director of Litigation at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, where she's worked since 2016. At LDF, she worked tirelessly to promote racial equity in numerous areas. Much of her work has been dedicated to protecting the constitutional right to vote through challenging discriminatory voting laws, including challenging a ban on the use of curbside voting during the 2020 election, which was critical to keeping people safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ms. Merle will also bring the unique perspective of a public defender to the bench. From 2011 to 2012, she served as the Assistant Federal Public Defender. If confirmed, she would be the first person with this experience in the Eastern District of New York in nearly 30 years. Ms. Merle will bring a range of professional experiences to the bench and deep knowledge and experience in both civil and criminal law. She previously worked in private practice at Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson, where she had the opportunity to work on complex commercial and civil rights litigation. She started her legal career as a law clerk, first for Judge Robert Carter in the Southern District of New York, and later for Judge John Gleason in the district in which she is now being nominated. The knowledge and expertise she gained in the courtroom, both as a law clerk and experienced trial lawyer, will be valuable and allow her to hit the ground running on day one as a federal judge. Ms. Merle has demonstrated fairness in the courtroom, and she will follow the rule of law as judge. That is why 19 senior lawyers from prominent national and international law firms submitted a letter in support of her confirmation, citing her consistent willingness to dig into the facts and controlling authorities in order to arrive at an argument or result well-grounded in precedent and principles. They highlighted her respect of opposing viewpoints and her thoughtful analysis. I'm proud to support Ms. Merle, a nominee who has dedicated her career to public service and serving the disadvantaged. While her law firm, for example, she dedicated approximately 900 hours to pro bono work. As an attorney, she also demonstrated her commitment to the legal profession through teaching future lawyers at Columbia and New York University law schools. In addition, Ms. Merle has exceptional academic qualifications as a graduate of University of Texas at Austin and New York University School of Law. I'd like to urge the committee to confirm Nusrat Choudhury to the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of New York, whose nomination I also supported. If confirmed, Ms. Choudhury would be the first Muslim woman to serve as a federal judge. I commend President Biden's commitment to diversifying our federal courts, and both these nominees would bring critical voices to the bench. I urge the committee to swiftly confirm Natasha Merle to the Eastern District of New York so she can bring the much-needed experience and expertise to the bench. Thank you so much for this opportunity to address the committee.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. And in the nick of time, the majority leader has arrived.
The joke about timing, right?
No.
You have to ask me we'll let Corey do it since he's so good at this.
Say
You have
that.
to ask me two questions. What is my profession? And then after I answer that, to what do I owe my great success? Corey.
What is your profession?
I'm a stand-up comedian.
And to what?
Timing.
This very serious meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee had a momentary lapse, but now Senator Schumer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, my colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee, my colleagues here today. It's always a pleasure to be back here, as you know, where I served for many years. This morning, I have the true honor of introducing Nusrat Chowdhury, whom I've urged President Biden to nominate as a federal judge for New York's Eastern District. She's a history maker. She is the first Bangladeshi to be nominated for the bench. She is only the second Muslim American to be nominated and be on the bench. And she is the first Muslim American woman. So this is a great day for glass ceilings and for history as America grows and grows and expands and becomes greater and greater. So she's just going to be great. One of the things I'd like people to know about Ms. Chowdhury is that she's here with some pretty important guests. I want to recognize her husband, Michael, her mother, Nafisa, her two brothers, Arif and Saif. Raise your hands. Hello, everybody. Congratulations. I know this is a proud, proud day for all of them. The second thing, another thing to know about Ms. Chowdhury is that her life, her family, and her career is a shining example of the American dream. She is the daughter of immigrant parents. Her father was born in modern-day Bangladesh and came to the U.S. as the first known Bangladeshi to win a Fulbright travel grant. Her mother, also from Bangladesh, worked with the Illinois Public School Food Services for more than 20 years, Mr. Chairman, and together they helped dozens of immigrants find a life in this great country. When I mentioned Mr. Chowdhury, to Bangladeshis, even in New York, they had heard his reputation about helping settle the community and deal with the community in Chicago and throughout America. I'm sorry to steal your thunder, Mr. Chairman. I know that Ms. Chowdhury was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. I know that she is presently legal director of the ACLU of Illinois, but she also lived in Brooklyn for 17 years, and so I'm proud to champion her as a New Yorker. As a graduate of Columbia, Princeton, Yale Law School, Ms. Chowdhury forged her legal career precisely in New York City. She worked with the ACLU for over a decade, working with the National Security Project and the Racial Justice Program. She dedicated her career to protecting the rights of the downtrodden and making sure that all people can have their voices heard in the courts of law, from the privileged to the impoverished. Her experience is vast. She's handled more than 24 federal cases, 8 class actions, and has been lead counsel in 16 cases. She's worked both at the state and federal level and argued cases both in the district court and an appeal. She has handled a whole host of issues ranging from civil rights to criminal justice reform to First Amendment issues and so much more. She's represented veterans and immigrants, has worked with law enforcement to improve policing practices in cities ranging from Milwaukee to Chicago to Boston. In short, she's done it all. And as I mentioned, but it's worth repeating, in addition to her experience, Ms. Chowdhury would make history as the first Bangladeshi American, the first Muslim American woman, and only the second Muslim American ever to serve as a federal judge. This is a great milestone, Mr. Chairman and my colleagues. I believe that our courts are at their strongest when they mirror the richness and dynamism of our democracy. And there are many Bangladeshis coming into New York and to the United States. And when the young children see Ms. Chowdhury on the bench, God willing, they will know that America welcomes them and that they can achieve great things too. So it's a great day for the whole country. I've been proud to work with many of you this year in advancing nominees who are not only qualified, but also shatter the mold of judicial nominees that we've been accustomed to for so long. We did so less than a month ago by confirming Judge Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I want to thank the committee for its great work in that regard, and you, Mr. Chairman, in particular. And of the near 60 judges that this Senate majority has confirmed, 3/4 have been women 2/3 people of color. We hope the trailblazers of today can be closer to the norm of tomorrow. We want our courts to include more women, more diverse candidates, both demographically and professionally, and more judges who come from unique backgrounds. A rich, diverse judiciary is vital for our democracy and for Americans' faith in the solemn promise of equal justice under law that we're all entitled to. There is no doubt in my mind that Ms. Chaudhry would help advance that cause. Finally, before I depart, I also want to recognize Natasha Merle, who has been nominated as a judge for the Eastern District and has been introduced by my friend Senator Gillibrand. Ms. Merle worked with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund since 2016, has practiced at every level of the legal system, and will make a fine addition to the federal bench. I thank my colleagues for letting me speak this morning, and I congratulate Ms. Chaudhry for her groundbreaking nomination.
Thank you, Senator Schumer, Gillibrand, Congressman Clyburn for joining us. We are now going to recognize a member of the committee, Senator Padilla of California, to introduce Judge Alba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just giving it a second here for Senator Schumer to make way here. I want to thank you and Ranking Member Grassley for the opportunity to introduce today's outstanding nominee to serve as a federal judge for the Eastern District of California. Judge Ana de Alba is here, along with her daughter, her brother, and sister-in-law, and nephews. It's a family celebration, and the committee welcomes you all here this morning. Judge de Alba brings a lifelong commitment to advancing justice in the Central Valley. She's a daughter of immigrants from Mexico, born in Merced, California, and grew up in a family of farm workers. Judge de Alba watched her mother and her grandmother struggle with unfair treatment as they worked together in some of the hardest jobs imaginable. She decided that one day she would become a lawyer to help families like her own. And through her hard work and commitment to getting a good education, she made her way to earning a bachelor's degree and a JD from the University of California, Berkeley. And after graduating, she built a successful career in private practice in the Central Valley. She came home to make a difference. Judge de Alba was known for representing clients who faced discrimination and harassment in the workplace. And she realized her childhood dream of service by establishing a workers' rights clinic for low-wage workers to learn their rights and to seek legal advice. In 2018, based on her extensive legal experience and commitment to public good, Judge de Alba was appointed by then-Governor Brown to serve as a Superior Court judge for Fresno County. And there she's presided over thousands of criminal hearings and 7 bench trials. She's also handled sensitive juvenile cases and serves on the court's Environmental Quality Act panel. Judge de Alba is dedicated, she's fair, and universally respected by her colleagues. Her record of accomplishment and judicial experience will be critical as Judge de Alba prepares to join the bench in the Eastern District of California, one of the most impacted and overworked federal judicial districts in the country. I also want to note that if confirmed, Judge de Alba will be the first Latina to sit on the Eastern District's bench. She'll bring a deep personal knowledge of the Central Valley and clearly a passion for equal justice, informed and inspired by her own family's story. Judge de Alba is an outstanding nominee who will help the federal bench better reflect and understand the very people that it serves, which is a critical part of our task on this committee. Mr. Chairman, I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting Judge de Alba.
Thank you very much, Senator Padilla. We have 2 panels today. The first panel will be the Circuit Court nominees, Ms. Abudu and Judge Childs. The second panel will be the 3 District Court nominees. So at this point, I'd ask the 2 Circuit Court nominees to come forward, please, and to stay standing for a moment while I administer the oath. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Ms. Abudu, please proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Durbin, for your introduction and for this tremendous opportunity. I also want to thank Ranking Member Grassley and the committee for scheduling this hearing and for your time this morning. I want to extend my appreciation to President Biden for nominating me and for his confidence in me to assume such an important role and responsibility. My thanks also goes to my home state senators, Senator Warnock and Ossoff, for their support of my nomination. I want to acknowledge my parents, Dr. Paul Abudu and Elizabeth Akrong, for their love and their courage in making the journey decades ago from Ghana to this beautiful country to provide me and my siblings the opportunities we have been so privileged to enjoy, which is absolutely one of the reasons why I'm even able to sit here before you all today. I also want to give a very special thanks to my Uncle Akwe Ati and his wife, my Auntie Yannick, who are with me today, to my sister Madeline Abudu, my brother, Pastor John Abudu, and to Robina Simwanga, who played a major influence in my life. I'm also here today with my daughters, who serve as my daily inspiration. Their love and constant, unwavering support have played a significant role in my ability to balance the joys and responsibilities of motherhood with the demands and fulfillment of being an attorney. I am so proud of the very intelligent, hardworking, amazing young women they are. In addition, I must thank the family and friends around the nation and around the world who have supported me in so many ways and to whom I owe a tremendous amount of gratitude. I'm truly humbled and honored to be before you all today as a nominee to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and I welcome the committee's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Abudu. Judge Childs. We make sure your microphone's turned on. There you go.
Good morning, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and members of the committee. It is a great honor and privilege to appear before you today. I am deeply thankful to President Biden for nominating me to be a circuit judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. I must express my sincere gratitude to Majority Whip James Clyburn for his confidence in me and kind remarks, Senator Lindsey Graham for his endorsement and gracious sentiments, and Senator Tim Scott for his support. Almost 12 years ago, I sat before this committee as a nominee to the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina. I am again profoundly humbled to be considered for this remarkable opportunity for public service in the federal judiciary and to serve our great country. Serving as a member of the third branch of government shows me every day that our work is meaningful and has great impact. I realize I would not have the opportunity without the enduring love of my family. My husband, Dr. Floyd Angus, and our wonderful daughter have both been by my side and serve as an extraordinary source of inspiration. My mother, Chandra Childs, despite the challenges of being a single parent after my father passed away, sacrificed and ensured that my sister Tracy and I pursued excellence in our education and activities as we achieved our dreams. I love you all. I sincerely appreciate the familial love and support provided by my sister, her daughter Jocelyn, my in-laws Reverend Jocelyn and Rita Angus, and my paternal cousin James Tillman, who are all here today. I know that my late father and all of my late grandparents are shining a guiding light on these proceedings. Lastly, I recognize my court family and dear friends who have been sending me well wishes and prayers from around the nation. Each of you are cherished in my life. I thank this committee and all who consider my nomination for this invitation to be here today. I look forward to answering the members' questions.
Thanks, Judge Childs. We're going to do 5-minute rounds from Democrat to Republican side, back and forth. And I'll start with Ms. Abudu. Ms. Abudu, if I read your background, and if I were setting out to hire an attorney, if my case was a complicated case, I'd put you high on the list, because I take a look at your legal career and realize you have tackled some of the toughest legal issues, and many times some unpopular legal issues. And you've handled it well, and you've moved up in the ranks, and you're a recognized seasoned litigator. In the area of civil rights, whether it's voting rights or others, you remind me of Thurgood Marshall, because everyone knew what his career consisted of, fighting for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund on voting issues and criminal justice issues, and he was well recognized as a leader. I recommend a book called Devil in the Grove, if you've run across it. Extraordinary story of how he risked his life to represent some of the most controversial defendants in dangerous courtroom circumstances. And I think of your work with the ACLU as well when I think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Everyone knew where Ruth Bader Ginsburg stood. She did not mince words when it came to her political beliefs. And this Senate approved both of those people, Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to serve on our highest court. I asked the staff to check on the roll call vote. Thurgood Marshall was 69-11 after his career as Solicitor General and his career before that with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was confirmed by the Senate for the Supreme Court by a vote of 96-3, an extraordinary vote. But you're going to hear in questions that will be posed to you today some real question as to whether or not you can be objective, dispassionate, throw away the role of advocate and be a judge at one of the highest courts in our land. So I want to give you this opportunity to explain your role as an advocate and your aspiration to be a judge.
Thank you, Senator Durbin, for those comments and that question. I started my career actually very early on as a staff attorney with the 11th Circuit. It's where I understood the important role that the courts play in the lives of real people. As a staff attorney, it's where I really honed my skills in terms of legal research and writing and understanding and wrestling with really difficult issues such as constitutional procedure and civil rights claims. I understood firsthand the importance of people, of litigants appearing before a court, understanding that that judge is fair, impartial, unbiased, and will give them a real meaningful opportunity to be heard. I've appreciated my role as an advocate, and I understand that as an advocate, your responsibility is to zealously represent your client's interests within the bounds of the law. However, as a judge, as I stated, it is to be fair. It is to be impartial. It is to make sure that your decisions are clear and well-reasoned. And my commitment to you, Chairman Durbin, as well as to this committee, is that if I am so fortunate to be confirmed, that is the kind of judge I will be.
Thank you. Judge Childs, we know a lot about you because your senator from South Carolina has told us a lot, and I respect him. He's my friend. We disagree on many things, but he has said nothing but kind words about you and your service. And your friend, Jim Clyburn, has been a dear friend of mine for decades, so you come with the highest recommendation. I'm going to be more specific with you. For the past year, you've been presiding over a multi-district litigation involving 100 state tort and data privacy law claims. Complicated law. In this case, In re Blackbaud, the plaintiffs have alleged that cyber criminals staged a ransomware attack on Blackbaud systems and held the plaintiffs' data for ransom. Can you give us an overview of the legal claims in that case and what you believe they raise as issues that Congress should consider?
Well, thank you, Senator, for that question. I will state that it's ongoing litigation so that I can only speak a little bit about it. But generally speaking, I was very fortunate to be given this case by the multi-district litigation panel. I am the lead judge for this case, which is occurring in over 20 states. It is challenging laws in all 50 states as well as the U.S. territories. It is also a case in which there are putative class action for nationwide as well as local. It has over 95 statutory as well as other constitutional and statutory claims and general negligence. I've had the fortunate opportunity to manage this litigation through discovery, having coordinated particular scheduling orders so that we can make it as as efficient as possible, and then also to make sure that I have ruled appropriately on several of the dispositive motions. So it's been a great honor and opportunity to manage that type of litigation.
Thank you, Judge. Senator Grassley.
Yeah. Ms. Abdu, I'm going to follow up with the question that Chairman asked you. I heard your answer. I'm sure it's a very sincere answer. But with the organization that you're now connected with, I have some questions about your feeling towards some of the positions they've taken. Since 2019, you've worked for the center. During that time, the center has labeled several organizations like the American Family Association, the Alliance for Defending Freedom, the Family Research Council, and multiple Christian nonprofit organizations as hate groups. Do you agree with the center's decision to characterize these organizations as hate group? And if not, have you taken any action to address the center's labeling of Christian organizations that way?
Thank you, Senator Grassley. As you stated, I started with the SPLC about 3 years ago, and I was hired by the organization to lead its voting rights program. In that capacity, I have been in the organization's legal department, and it's a big organization. So I haven't been a part of the branch of SPLC that monitors and researches and profiles anti-government groups and other outside organizations. So I can't speak, unfortunately, to the research, again, that led to the organization's decision to profile those organizations in those ways.
Would you consider those organizations as a hate group?
Senator, I wouldn't even be able to comment to that because I'm not as familiar with those organizations in terms of the work that they do, their mission, and again, why SPLC profiled them in that way.
Well, they aren't less well-known organizations, at least in this town, and I would think you would know what they're up to or not up to. So let me move on. The center and its founder, Morris Dees, has been very controversial. On that, there seems to be some bipartisan agreement. As one civil rights and anti-death penalty attorney wrote in 2007 letter, quote, Morris Dees is a con man and crown fraud, and I and others, such as U.S. Circuit Judge Cecil Poole, have observed, end of quote. Numerous articles have stated the same. The deeply ingrained issues of the center have been known since at least 1995. One of its former staffers said it is, quote, unquote, a virtual buffet of injustices. There is also some hypocrisy in the sense that the Southern Poverty Law Center's latest financial shows that it's sitting on assets worth $500 million. Given all that, why did you choose to work at the organization that a staffer described as a virtual buffet of injustices?
Senator Grassley, when I joined the SPLC 3 years ago, as you noted, it was during a time when the organization was going through some changes. In fact, Mr. Dees left the organization very soon after I started. I joined SPLC because of the organization's overall commitment to advancing racial justice with a focus on the South. And in that role, it's been my responsibility to ensure that all people, but especially people of color living in the South of the United States, have equal access and are able to exercise their fundamental right to vote. It is that commitment to racial justice that has led me to continue the work that I've dedicated my career so far to, even within the SPLC.
Okay, this will have to be my last question. The center is infamous for its work labeling groups as hate groups for years. There's been repeated examples of the center targeting mainstream conservative groups that disagree with us. As Mark Potok, a former senior fellow and editor-in-chief of the Center's Journal, stated, quote, "Sometimes the press will describe as monitoring hate groups and so on. I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, to completely destroy them," end of quote. Can you point to any documented example of the centers renouncing Mr. Potok's statements, and did you consider this mission when you chose to work in your present position?
Senator Grassley, in response to your first question, the answer is I'm not familiar, again, with the organization's research and profiling of individuals or outside groups, including anti-government groups. However, I can say that, again, my commitment to equal justice under law, to racial justice, to ensuring that all people are able to exercise their constitutional and fundamental rights has been the focus of my work with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done in that capacity.
The only reaction I would have to what you told me is this, that you say you don't know about the work on this. Just reading current events over a period of several years, you would pick up some of this information about the center. So I can't accept that you don't know anything about what this organization does in regard to labeling certain groups a certain way. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Abudu, Senator Durbin said that he would put you at the top of his list of litigators if he had to choose one to represent him. I think I'm paraphrasing him, but could you tell us what about your very extensive and impressive litigation experience has prepared you for a role on the appellate court? Because you've been in the courtroom, you've tried cases, you've litigated actively, and of course the appellate court makes rulings based on legal principles and statutes and constitutional principles. Could you describe a little bit about how your experience would lead you to make decisions on an appellate court?
Thank you, Senator. I have over 20 years of litigation experience. As I shared earlier, I started my career very early on with the 11th Circuit Staff Attorney Office. So I started understanding the importance of the impartial role that judges play when it comes to impacting the lives of real people. I then took some time in my career to be on the litigator side of the bench, and that was where I really understood the importance of upholding the rule of law. I had an opportunity to litigate cases from the beginning, where filing and putting the complaints together, through the appeal, including arguments in appellate courts, including the 11th Circuit, where I hope to be confirmed. That experience as a litigator helped me to understand, again, why it is important that we have a fair judiciary, that people have a meaningful opportunity to be heard because of how important the issues that are being presented to the court are to them. That experience has allowed me to come, hopefully, if I am, again, fortunate to be confirmed, really full circle in my career to being back, hopefully, on the bench, where I can take that experience and apply it in a way that allows litigants to understand why our court system is so important, that they don't give up on the judiciary as an avenue for vindicating their important fundamental constitutional rights.
Thank you very much. Judge Childs, I'd like to ask you a similar question. You've been a trial judge, I think by my count, about 15 years. You've done 5,000 trials in the District of South Carolina as a federal judge alone, which is extraordinarily impressive. I think your reversal rate is less than 1%. Tell me about how you'd feel going from the trial court to an appellate position.
Thank you, Senator. I have had over 30 years opportunity to practice in the profession as both a lawyer and then as well as a trial judge. While I was in private practice, I had the opportunity to handle many cases, both representing plaintiffs, defendants, government, corporations, small businesses, as well as a state trial judge, had the opportunity to have lots of high-profile cases, complex litigation. I served as chief judge of the business courts as well as general sessions, which is our criminal court. And then in my federal court capacity, as you've indicated, not quite 5,000 trials, but at least 5,000 matters or so, handling constitutional and statutory claims as well. And then in that regard, we've handled so many very complex litigation issues, so I believe that I'm very well equipped. But more particularly, as a sitting trial judge, both in state court and federal court, I had the opportunity to sit by designation with our South Carolina Supreme Court, as well as with the Fourth Circuit, and in an appellate capacity as a workers' compensation commissioner and through the Division of Labor.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Sass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Abudu, I want to go back to the line of questioning you just had with Senator Grassley. I'm confused, so I just wonder if I can ask some follow-up questions. The Southern Poverty Law Center defined the Alliance Defending Freedom, a legal group that's committed to protecting religious liberty and free speech, as a hate group. Do you agree with that characterization?
Senator, as I stated earlier, my role within the SPLC is in the legal department. It is a separate department that deals with the monitoring and research and profiling of anti-government and other outside groups. So again, I can't speak with any authority as to the organization's decision with respect to that work.
But ma'am, Southern Poverty Law Center has obviously done lots of good work historically, but that's not how they raise their money now. How do you think they get their hundreds of millions of dollars?
I appreciate, Senator, your recognition of the wonderful work that the organization has done. It's been because of organizations like SPLC that we have, for example, the Sixth Amendment right to counsel, that we have ended anti-miscegenation laws like in cases such as Loving v. Virginia. And it is that kind of work that organizations like SPLC has done that drew me to an organization like that.
Ma'am, I don't want to interrupt you, but the chairman's going to cut me off. We are going to agree on a lot of history of the civil rights movement. That's not what the Southern Poverty Law Center does now. It has hundreds of millions of dollars. I think last year, I don't know what the exact number was, but raised 150-ish million. I think they have $500 million in the bank. And they raise their money largely by defaming people that they disagree with. They label group after group after group hate groups. And you're unaware when you went to work there that that's kind of their main bread and butter right now. Could you define hate for us, even if you don't want to speak to Alliance Defending Freedom or Trinity Lutheran, or we could go organization after organization that they've labeled a hate group. What is a hate group?
Senator, I can say that hate is a very negative feeling that is directed to someone that's often without any foundation. What I can also say, Senator, is that the money that the organization has raised has been used to support the work such as the voting rights work that I've done, representing individuals and communities that if they did not have access to pro bono counsel, they would not have the resources necessary to vindicate their rights in federal or state court.
We are aligned on many things, but do you think the Religious Freedom Restoration Act is a hateful law?
No, sir, I do not. In fact, I've dedicated a good part of my career prior to joining the SPLC to religious liberty, representing a variety of individuals of various religious faiths wanting to exercise their right under the First Amendment in terms of free exercise.
But doesn't your employer label state-based laws modeled on the Religious Freedom Restoration Act hateful?
Senator, as a litigator, I have never, with the SPLC, brought a case arguing related to, I will say, religious freedom. But prior to joining the SPLC, I have represented individuals who have argued that they were being discriminated on the job because they wanted to acknowledge or express their religious faith, individuals who even in state custody were denied access to adhering to their faith. And as a civil rights lawyer, especially a voting rights lawyer, I have represented a lot of Christian individuals in particular whose faith has served as the foundation for how they have been able to continue in their march for access to equal justice.
So I appreciate the substance of the answer you just gave, but you work for an employer that raises money by saying that people who hold the views that you just said you defend are hateful. That's how they raise their money. And you didn't know that when you went to work there?
Senator, again, the funds that the SPLC has raised has been used to represent individuals who, if not having access to pro bono counsel, would not be able to exercise in many ways their constitutional rights. And that work that I've been able to do with the organization, as I said earlier, I'm very proud of.
Ma'am, we're at time, and there are many substantive issues where I know we would agree, but it just doesn't pass the laugh test that you're unaware that the organization you work for raises its money by labeling people who believe in the historic constitutional definition of religious liberty as hate groups. That's how they raise their money. You're not unaware of that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hirono?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to both of you and your families. I asked the following two initial questions of every nominee before any of the committees on which I sit. So I'll start with these two initial questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature? Ms. Abudu and Judge Childs?
No, Senator.
No, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
For Judge Childs, you were the chair and co-chair of the Judicial Independence Committee for the Federal Judges Association. And you gave a speech in 2019 where you spoke about trends in litigation over the last decade and noted constant attacks on the judiciary. You stated these efforts are, quoting you, are nothing less than attempts to weaken the authority and legitimacy of our courts by painting them as either the enemy in our democracy or suggesting that justice is for sale, end quote. What do you think needs to be done to combat the perception that courts are for sale, and are there actions that you take to preserve the authority and legitimacy of our courts?
Senator, in offering those particular sentiments, I'm always aware that we, our judges, are the face of our judiciary. It is up to us to approach each case very humbly, to make sure that we understand the nature of the dispute, to have a clear understanding of the parties' litigation, to research thoroughly and diligently all matters that are before us, and to issue well-articulated and thorough decisions. So I think I say that to say how we approach our job in that regard. We are also on attack with respect to judicial security, so we have to act independently. I don't operate with any fear or favor or with respect to any political agendas or personal views as I approach my case. So as we as judges are the face of the judiciary, when we do so, I think that helps us to be better decision makers.
Well, there's no question that there are a lot of concerns about our judiciary being captive to judges with an ideological axis to grind. And I agree with you that the opinions that our judges issue should be seen as based on fair and objective decision making. So I hope that that is what is going to be reflected in our judiciary. But I do not think that there are everyone on the judiciary who agrees with that kind of perspective. You have a lot of years of experience, but one of the things that I note is it is very difficult for women and members of the minority community from being made partner. And you were with a very large law firm, and after being there for 8 years at Nixon Pruitt, you became the first Black woman to become a partner in that very large firm in the state of South Carolina. How was that experience important to you?
I really thank the firm because they gave me a wonderful opportunity to try cases, to handle very complex matters, and supported me with a lot of bar activities and professional opportunities. That gave me the opportunity to have my face seen and not just be a member of the firm, but they actually nurtured me so that I could go on and do bigger and better things.
Well, you were the first Black woman to become partner. Are there other minority people who are now partners of that large firm?
I am very proud to say that I mentored at least 3 other women over a period of 5 years to become the first Black female partners in other major law firms.
We have a ways to go, I think. Yes, thank you for your efforts. For Ms. Abudu, what is it about the civil rights laws that drew you to become a lawyer in focusing on civil rights issues?
Thank you, Senator. First, I would say my love of this country and the opportunities, as I mentioned in my opening statement, that I've been afforded because of the opportunities that exist in this country. And I also understand that the history of the civil rights movement has always been about making our country even better. And so to have an opportunity after I graduated law school to work for organizations that were dedicated to that mission has been a tremendous honor. To transition, I hope, to the role of a judge, if I'm so fortunate to be confirmed, and to play that role in terms of really upholding the rule of law, to making sure that the principle of equal justice under law actually means something and impacts people's lives in a meaningful way, is another tremendous honor that I'm so grateful to have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, Ms. Abudu, congratulations. I want to just talk to you, at least initially, a little bit about the law. Ms. Abudu, what's the adequate and independent state grounds doctrine?
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
You're welcome.
In my practice, I actually haven't had an opportunity to use that principle or doctrine, but my general understanding is that it speaks to the fact that if a federal court is able to resolve an issue based on state law grounds, then that is what should lead in terms of the court's ultimate decision.
Okay. What is the selective incorporation doctrine?
That also, in the voting rights or civil rights context, is a term that I haven't had to come across. But what I do know is that as a legal research and writer, and for sure confronting possibly new areas of law, I look very forward to doing my due diligence in terms of making sure I'm familiar with doctrines such as that one.
Do you know what it is?
So no, I'm not familiar with it sitting here today.
Incorporation doctrine? Okay. Well, you're going to see a lot of it if you're confirmed on the 11th Circuit. Can Congress pass any law that the Constitution doesn't prohibit?
Based on the frame of your question, I would say yes, that sounds right.
So you think Congress has plenary power?
Well, I would first look to what the Supreme Court has said in terms of following precedent.
No, but I'm interested, if I could, Counselor, in your opinion. Does the United States Congress have delegated powers or plenary power?
Well, the Congress has both, I would say, from my general understanding. Again, it depends on the context and the issue, but it is.
Can you explain the difference to me between strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny?
Senator, strict scrutiny is the highest level of scrutiny that's often applied in constitutional cases.
What's the definition? I'm sorry, go ahead. Excuse me.
So it requires that a state, when enacting a law or regulation, have a compelling governmental interest for doing so, and that the law is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest.
Okay.
And then intermediate, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, so intermediate speaks to the issue of having a substantial interest or that is, or an important governmental interest that is substantially related.
Okay. Do you believe that the meaning of the Constitution is immutable, or does it change over time?
Senator, I would say that the Supreme Court in some cases has analyzed that issue, and the response really does depend on the context and the issue. But what the court does or has done in its approach, of course, is look to the plain meaning of a statute or of the Constitution, because that really is where the inquiry should start. And if the language is plain, then that is where the inquiry can end.
Okay, thank you for that. You were involved in a 2021 report from the Southern Poverty Law Center about voting in Louisiana. Did you say, quote, racist white Southerners, close quote, and, quote, hostile white voters and governmental officials in Louisiana continue to make local polling places and early voting locations threatening spaces for black voters? Did you say that?
Senator, I do not believe that I said that. I haven't read that publication in some time.
Will you help write it?
I helped to draft the publication and approved it, but I'm not familiar with that language.
You know, okay. In that same report, did you say, well, tell me where in Louisiana local polling places and early voting locations are threatening African-American voters? You said it, so which polling places?
So again, Senator, obviously I don't have that report in front of me to be able to read and remind myself of the examples that might have been shared. But what I can say is that Louisiana...
Let me cut you off because I'm going to run out of time, Counselor. Let me ask you one more. In August 2021, we're not talking 20 years ago, we're talking 2021, you were involved in another report by the SPLC. And you said that voter identification, photo ID to vote, is burdensome and does not serve any legitimate state interest. Do you really believe that?
Senator, identification for voting is
yes,
something...
but first, do you really believe that? You said it. You meant it?
The Supreme Court in Crawford v. Marion County has already upheld voter ID laws as per se
Yeah, but you said it didn't serve any legitimate state interest. Do you believe that?
Again, Senator, without that language in front of me, it's hard to understand the
You
context.
said it. Here it is, August 2021.
Well, there are cases...
I'm just asking you to explain to me why having to prove you are who you say you are before you vote doesn't serve, you said it doesn't serve any legitimate state interest. I'm just asking you to explain that statement to me.
I understand, Senator Kennedy, and again, without being able to see the language that appears before and after, it's hard for the context.
You deny that you said it?
I can't say that I haven't seen that language in front of me, but what I do know is that there have been voter ID cases in which courts have found that
I'm familiar with the case law, but I'm asking what you think, because you may be on the 11th Circuit. Do you believe that voter ID is inappropriate?
My commitment is to uphold the Supreme Court's decision in Crawford v. Marion
I know, but
County.
here you said it was inappropriate. You deny that?
Well, again, Senator, it would be helpful to know if that section of the report also cites to cases in which federal courts have found that certain voter ID laws do pose an burden on voters.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Booker?
I'm going to yield to Senator Whitehouse, who's more seniority.
Senator Whitehouse more senior than Senator Booker.
And more hair.
Now, that's no reason to yield.
That's a big group, Senator Booker.
Let's test them in the 40, though, and see who wins.
I think it's kind of a clean sweep of the committee, so to speak. First of all, welcome to you both. I'm delighted that you are here. And I just wanted to take my opportunity with both of you to make a point about some of the opposition that has manifested itself to your nominations. And that is that I've made a pretty strong effort to try to document how it is that the last 3 Supreme Court justices were chosen and how their confirmations were campaigned for and how special interests pitch them now that they're on the court. And what you see is an enormous amount of anonymous funding. With respect to the selection of the judges, that was done by, I should say, through the Federalist Society, through an operation run within the Federalist Society that gave Donald Trump his lists of who was acceptable and recommended people off of those lists. In effect, the selections were made by whoever was behind that private organization's judicial turnstile operation, if you will. And then once their names were selected by whoever was behind that operation, you then had the Judicial Crisis Network and other groups raise enormous amounts of money, checks as big as $15 million, $17 million, to run the political campaigns to put pressure on senators to make sure they had the confirmation votes locked up. And now we're actually working with the Judicial Conference to try to get a better look at who is behind a lot of the amicus groups that come into these courts, and particularly to the Supreme Court in little orchestrated flotillas, all singing in harmony so that the courts know what to do. And very often those are also anonymously funded, and there's every reason to believe that it's the same interests behind the anonymous funding of the Federalist Society's selection turnstile and the Judicial Crisis Network's confirmation campaigns and these amici curiae front groups. But of course, they're hidden behind what we call in this business dark money. Big contributions that are unidentified. You don't know who the real donor is. It's been laundered through Donors Trust. It's been laundered through a 501c4. It's been laundered through a shell corporation. There are different ways to strip the identity off of the money. And of course, without the Trump administration to make the appointments that the dark money folks want, they have to find other things to do. And it's been interesting watching them turn up. First in Judge Jackson's confirmation hearings, and now actually right here, we have a letter from the president of the Judicial Crisis Network asking us not to support Ms. Abudu in particular. And what's kind of ironic, it's on the grounds of her association with dark money groups. Well, the preeminent judicial dark money group is Judicial Crisis Network. They were the ones getting these $15 million checks, these $17 million checks to run these campaigns, first of all to stop Merrick Garland, then to push in Gorsuch, then to push in Kavanaugh, then to push in Barrett. So this is really, really a weird situation in which essentially the most culpable entity on a particular topic is accusing others of being, guilty of the same thing that they are. The Judicial Crisis Network is what is called a fictitious name under Virginia corporate law for another group. And it's one of several fictitious names that these groups operate under. There are two, because the state of the art is to have a 501c3 and a 501c4 and operate them as a twin. Same location, similar staff, overlapping boards, often the same president. And then off of that core, which is something called the Concord Fund and something called the 85 Fund, they then have these, quote, fictitious names. Same entity, but it's allowed to operate under a fictitious name. So Judicial Crisis Network is a fictitious name. So we're hearing opposition to Ms. Abudu from the president of an organization that isn't even real. It's the fictitious name for another front group. And much of the funding and much of the operational work for them, I'll just run through their names real quickly. There's Judicial Education Project and Judicial Crisis Network as one of the pairs of fictitious names. There's Honest Elections Project and Honest Elections Project Action as the other pair of fictitious names. And then there's Free to Learn and Free to Learn Action as the other pair of fictitious names. And they are given instruction by a separate set of groups, CRC Advisors and CRC Strategies, that are the operating system by a guy named Leonard Leo, who, small world, was the guy who ran the turnstile for the selection of the Supreme Court nominees during the Trump administration. So the idea that this dark money network that has invested itself so much in picking this court, which now can be fairly described as the court that dark money built, is now critiquing Ms. Abudu over associations with dark money. I mean, it's a little bit like Vladimir Putin accusing the Ukrainians of massing troops on the Russian border. So I just wanted to make all that clear, because there's a lot of really ironic and nasty background to the groups that are now purporting to accuse Ms. Abudu of these associations with dark money organizations. So forgive me for going on an extra minute. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to each of you. We appreciate that you are here. Judge Childs, before I get into my questions, I just wanted to say, you know, it's one of the things in doing our due diligence is to look at records and talk with people that have served with individuals. And when I talk to South Carolinians, it is very clear to me that you are so highly regarded and so well respected and have truly commanded respect from all corners. And you're to be commended for that. And we appreciate that stellar reputation as a person and a jurist that you have built. And we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's see, Ms. Abudu, I want to talk with you about Southern Poverty Law Center and your work there, because as I've looked at some of your writings and speeches and interviews and things, you've repeatedly criticized America. You've criticized the criminal justice system and our institutions for suffering from your term, and I'm quoting you, systemic sexism and structural racism. And yet that organization, the Southern Poverty Law Center, has been embroiled in a racism and sexism scandal for years. And employees of the SPLC have said that it suffers from a, and I'm quoting from them, systemic culture of racism and sexism within its workplace, and an environment in which a woman is not seen and heard, end quote. So one employee stated that her, and I'm quoting again, that employee, quoting, boss only hires white people, end quote. So why do you remain committed to working for an organization with this type culture?
Senator Blackburn, as I shared with your colleague earlier, I joined the SPLC soon after those issues came to surface. I'm very happy that the work that I have done with the organization to advance the issue specifically of racial justice, and even more specifically in the area of voting rights, has been not to only address issues internally, but externally. And the work that I have done has been to make America even better.
Okay, let me go to that, because the SPLC got rid of their co-founder and longtime president because of those accusations. But recent reporting indicates that nothing has changed. This past August, a former staffer wrote an article revealing that the person who the SPLC brought in to fix these issues was hired only to, and I'm quoting them, protect the reputation of the SPLC and not to enact or recommend changes that were desperately needing, end quote. So back to you on the question, why have you spent years in a senior leadership position with an organization that has a notorious culture of sexual harassment and discrimination?
And Senator Blackburn, I referenced my work with the SPLC because that is the only work to which I can speak of. I'm not here to defend or to explain an entire organization of hundreds of employees.
Okay,
but
then let me ask you this. Do you think your work has made a difference? And if it has, why is that not visible to people? Why do they not realize that difference is there?
Senator Blackburn, I do believe my work has made a difference, and I hear that from my clients.
Let me move on to one other thing. Some of my colleagues have already expressed concern with your hate group list. And I know that you've got let's see, this list is what incited violence against people in groups like the Family Research Council. And you've also released a list of members of Congress who traffic in hate and extremism. The list includes me, as well as Senators Cruz and Hawley. So did you have any involvement in this list, including approving its publication?
No, Senator, I did not.
Were you aware of it?
No.
When did you become aware of it?
Well, the SPLC just recently published its Year in Hate report, and so that would be the most recent exposure that I would have had to the work the organization.
Can you explain why the three of us ended up on your hate list?
No, I cannot.
You can't. All right. Well, my time has expired. I have other questions that I'm going to submit to you for a response. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just have to delight in this room right now. This is a process that's been going on in the United States Senate for years, if not decades, but there has never been a room like this for a purpose such as this. To see the wide-ranging diversity in this room, family members, folks assembled, it is just extraordinary to me, and I am just feeling incredible amounts of joy and pride, not only in this nation, but also in our president. This president has nominated more black women to the circuit courts in the United States of America than every single other president combined. It is a tremendous accomplishment in diversifying our courts, and diverse teams are better teams in America. And to have our courts begin to reflect the true depth and greatness and glory of this diverse, wonderful, multicultural democracy is extraordinary. And I'm just feeling that I can't let this moment go by without marking the power of this room. You are both extraordinary, and I'm grateful. Honorable Judge Childs, I have no questions for you. Lindsey Graham has made it clear to me who you are and what you're about, and so I yield to Lindsey Graham and his wisdom on this matter. Ms. Abdu, I'm just grateful to see you here as well. I know you're going to get a lot of tough questioning today. I am excited to see the kind of folks who support you. From religious organizations from the Muslim community, religious organizations from the Jewish community, religious organizations from the Christian community. You have one of my favorite law enforcement organizations that really helped me in the city of Newark, Noble, which is this group of African-American law enforcement officers. They are a national organization that really do represent the safety and security of urban cores like the city of Newark, where African Americans are, and their faith in you and their letter of support actually really meant a lot for me to see. You also have numerous other organizations, in fact, 60 interfaith organizations. You have numerous civil rights organizations. You have organizations that I've worked with, including the National Council of Jewish Women, the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys, and more. But I'm really curious because I am a lifetime member of the NAACP. But you wouldn't ascribe all of the views of the NAACP to me, would you?
No, sir, I would not.
Yeah, because I've disagreed with the NAACP. but I've paid my dues and I've written them checks. How about the ACLU? I am a supporter of the ACLU. I think, if I'm correct, that I've given them money before. Would you ascribe all the views of the ACLU to me?
No, Senator.
Well, I appreciate that because the ACLU has sued me in the past. And that is definitely not just and right to ascribe that to me. I don't know if you've heard of this author, I say this in jest, named James Baldwin.
He sounds familiar.
He sounds familiar. You've probably read a lot of his works. Have you heard this quote? Because it's one of my favorite of his quotes. I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. Have you heard that quote before?
Yes, I have.
Do you think criticism of America amounts to hatred of America?
No, Senator.
Do you think criticism of America makes you less patriotic or more patriotic?
More patriotic, I would say.
Yes. And do you think that our country is perfect and beyond reproach?
No, not yet.
No. And our criminal justice system that purports to be fair and unbiased, is there bias in our criminal justice system?
There are still areas within our criminal justice system that need improvement, that is for sure.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right now, in a nation where there's no difference between blacks and whites for use of marijuana, for example, but African Americans are 4 times more likely to be arrested for their usage. That to me screams to a bias. And not to speak to that bias or criticize that bias or work to correct it is problematic to me. And so my time has expired, but you have said a lot of provocative things that are going to get a lot of attention today. I, for one, think that these provocative things that you have said about the need for change in our system, the need for fairness in our system, the need for justice in the justice system, the need for us to address issues of racial bias, the need for us to address issues of gender bias, the need for us in our criminal justice system, that does not discount you. It does not speak to any kind of lack of love. In fact, I look at your career and it screams of love of country. It speaks to patriotism. It speaks to sacrificing a lot of other options. Your pedigree and your degrees are pretty extraordinary. You could have pursued a path of wealth and comfort, but you have put yourself in the center of the unfinished business of America. And for that, I am grateful. And I celebrate this country at the prospect, have a president has put forth the prospect of having you serve on the Circuit Court of the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Senator Booker. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to both of you for coming to answer our questions today. Ms. Abudu, I'd like to start with you. Are you familiar with the concept of judge shopping?
It sounds familiar to forum shopping.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of a close cousin of or a subset of forum shopping. Sometimes it occurs within a particular judicial district or state where you're trying to get a judge that's more favorable to you. You've heard of that happening from time to time, regardless of the word described.
It's not something that I would support.
Right. And what's the reason why you wouldn't support it?
Because it undermines what should be a fair and impartial process where no matter which judge you appear before, you should feel that you will have a meaningful opportunity to be heard.
Right. Yes, no, that's well said. Now you're the director for strategic litigation for the Southern Poverty Law Strategy. That's your current position, is that right?
Yes.
Earlier this month, the Southern Poverty Law Center filed some litigation in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Alabama, challenging an Alabama statute called the Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act. The name of that case was Ladinsky versus Ivey. At about the same time, there were some other groups that filed very similar litigation in the Middle District of Alabama, challenging the same law with virtually identical causes of action. That case was called Walker versus Marshall. There were some motions that took place that moved quickly. The plaintiffs in the Walker case moved to transfer the case to another judge within the Middle District. That motion was denied, and that case was transferred up to the Northern District. And then after those cases were themselves consolidated and assigned to a particular judge in the Northern District, both sets of plaintiffs moved to dismiss the case without prejudice, announcing simultaneously that they would be refiling the case probably within days. In an unusual move, it's unusual for a federal judge to call out parties in the process of dismissing a case pursuant to their motion. But the district judge assigned to that case, Judge Lyles Burke, in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Alabama, called the parties out for judge shopping. Now, as the director for strategic litigation of the Southern Poverty Law Center, I assume you were involved in these cases.
I'm not part of the litigation team for those cases, but yes, I am aware of those cases on our docket.
Okay, so those are outside of your role within the Southern Poverty Law Center?
As the Director of Strategic Litigation, my responsibility is to oversee and provide general management for our cases, but it is the subject matter experts and the litigation team that handle the day-to-day, including the filing of complaints, the briefing, and any oral arguments.
Okay. Now, do you agree with the Southern Poverty Law Center's position in that case that gender-affirming care such as hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery is quote-unquote medically necessary for minor children?
Senator, what I can say is that as you've described the case, it is ongoing litigation, so I want to be and need to be very careful what I can say about the litigation in terms of its posture as well as in terms of the claims and potential evidence that will be introduced.
Well, but wouldn't you have to recuse yourself if confirmed to this position from dealing with that case?
Senator, my commitment is I will recuse myself from any case where I am on the papers, where I have played a role in bringing the litigation, and beyond that, I will adhere to the rules of judicial conduct that pertain to recusal.
Would that cover your involvement in this case?
I would want to study it very carefully, but again, it is something that I take when it comes to recusal very seriously so that litigants understand they are being heard by an impartial, fair judge.
Finally, Ms. Abudu, about a year and a half, close to 2 years ago, you gave a speech in which you insisted, quote, "We continue to live in a separate and unequal society, as evidenced by our neighborhoods, schools, jobs, and perhaps most horrifying, our prisons and jails. Our current criminal justice system is one of the most humane examples of how racial discrimination operates and can ruin people's lives forever, as we've seen in the cases of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others. It's a criminal justice system that can literally kill you. When you add laws that prohibit people with a criminal conviction from voting, it's practically the same system as during slavery. Black people who have lost their freedom and cannot vote." Close quote. Is it the same? Is it the same? Is that a fair comparison to compare individuals who have been convicted of a crime and imprisoned on the basis of that conviction? Is that the same as slavery? And is that not damaging to the integrity of the court system? Is that an appropriate thing for someone to be considered for a high respected lifetime position on the federal courts to say about the federal court system?
Senator, those comments, which of course I don't have in front of me, but I will trust that it's a correct description were made, of course, in my role as an advocate. And as I shared with the committee earlier, I understand the difference between being an advocate as opposed to being a judge, where, again, you must be fair and impartial. But as an advocate, of course, your responsibility is to zealously represent the interests of your clients. And I also appreciate your citation to the unfortunate deaths that occurred as part of the criminal justice system, which provide the context in which those comments were made.
Just to be clear, I see my time's expired. This was not made in advocacy. This was not a legal brief. This was something you wrote in your name. Those were direct quotes that I read from you.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our nominees. Congratulations, Ms. Abudu. It's a pleasure to see a Georgian nominated for a judicial office such as this one. Welcome to the Judiciary Committee. Judge Childs, your reputation precedes you. I know the high regard with which you're held by senators in both parties, and congratulations on this nomination. Ms. Abudu, I want to ask you about the limits on judicial power. And there's been some discussion. Chair Durbin asked you about the distinctions between your role as a zealous advocate for clients and the role to which you may be confirmed as a judge. How do you understand the limits on judicial power, those established formally in our constitutional structure, and how will you limit yourself should you be confirmed as a judge?
Thank you, Senator Ossoff, and it's very nice to see you as well. In terms of the role of the judiciary, Article 3 of the Constitution is very clear in terms of the responsibilities and obligations and parameters in terms of the judges or the judiciary's role, and that is what I would adhere to.
Can you elaborate a bit on how you differentiate between the proper role of an advocate and the proper role of a judge? It's something that I know you've addressed previously in this hearing. Let me ask the question this way, for example. Will you, should you be confirmed, apply and uphold the law regardless of your personal policy preferences?
Absolutely, Senator.
And will you apply and uphold proper and constitutional statutes even where the outcomes of such application run contrary to your personal feelings, your personal moral judgments, your personal policy preferences?
Yes, Senator Ossoff, without hesitation.
Thank you, Ms. Abudu. Could you please characterize briefly for the committee your experience litigating cases related to the First Amendment?
Yes, I have litigated cases under the various clauses of the First Amendment. So I've worked to uphold or vindicate the free speech rights of individuals to express their political views, even when those views have been unpopular. I've worked to uphold the principle of the free exercise of religion to make sure that people are able to maintain their religious thought without any prohibitions, that they're able to exercise their freedom of religion without any encroachments of the government, as long as those encroachments are, past the test that the Supreme Court has established in terms of being neutral and generally applicable. And as you know, Congress has also enacted the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and that is a statute that I would also uphold and have had an opportunity to advocate on behalf of people for.
Why, as a matter of constitutional law, and why within the tradition and framework that defines our republic, how a federal government governs, is free speech and is freedom of the press so essential?
It's essential, Senator Ossoff, because when we look at the history of the drafting of the Constitution and the fact that the First Amendment speaks, our very First Amendment in the Constitution speaks to freedom of religion, freedom of thought, it's because that is what allows for, as the Supreme Court has stated, the marketplace of ideas, for people to express their views and exchange views, for people to change their mind or become even more entrenched in their positions. And is that what makes our nation great, which allows for rich dialogue and which allows for growth, which lets our country move in the direction of making sure we are embracing the best ideals that our Constitution represents.
Thank you, Ms. Abudu. The impulse to censor, the impulse to restrict the freedom of speech, the impulse to shrink the bounds of what is protected speech can emerge from actors across the political spectrum, especially at times of great controversy or polarization. How will you approach matters that may come before you as an appellate judge that pertain to the First Amendment protections of free speech and freedom of the press, even where such speech may be deemed harmful or offensive, even where such speech may be deemed by powerful people to be false as a matter of their opinion or perhaps as a matter of science?
In analyzing those cases, my guides will be the precedents from the Supreme Court as well as the precedents from the 11th Circuit. And in recognition that, as the founders stated, the Constitution and that Bill of Rights in particular is not just for the speech that we embrace, it is also for the speech that we disapprove of, because censorship is a danger to the very principles that are announced in the First Amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Abudu. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the past year and a half, we've seen a pattern from the Biden administration of nominating ideological zealots to our courts. A moment ago, Ms. Abudu, in answering questions from Senator Lee, you said you understood the difference between an advocate and a judge. Well, I'm sure you do. You've never served as a judge. You've spent your entire life as an advocate. And as an advocate on the extreme left, there has been a pattern of nominee after nominee that have been extreme zealots, but I have to say your nomination, when I look at your record, I find deeply concerning. The last 3 years you've served at the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a hateful and extreme place. And their hate, among other things, has led to horrific violence. I'm speaking in particular about the 2012 shooting at the Family Research Council here in Washington. There, a gunman sought to make a political statement by shooting as many members of the Family Research Council as possible, and he sought to smear their faces with Chick-fil-A sandwiches after he murdered them. He was only stopped due to the heroic efforts of the Family Research Council employee, Leo Johnson, whose courage saved many lives that day. The evidence in the case indicated that the shooter had assembled his targets by visiting the Southern Poverty Law Center website of so-called hate groups, where the Southern Poverty Law Center equated the Family Research Council with true bigoted hate groups like the KKK and the Nazi Party. Do you agree with your employer that the Family Research Council is equivalent to the KKK or the Nazi Party?
Senator Cruz, I would first respectfully state that although, yes, I have spent a big chunk of my career as a civil rights lawyer, early on in my career, I was actually a staff attorney with the 11th Circuit. So I started my career and my understanding of the legal profession from the position of being and representing the court to some extent and making
but being a staff attorney is not a judge. So could you answer the question, please?
Well, in terms of the...
Do you agree with your employer that the Family Research Council is comparable to the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party?
Senator, as I shared with your colleagues earlier, I can't comment to that. I'm in the legal department.
Well, why can't you? I'm asking if you agree with them. You work for them. That's what they say. Their hateful rhetoric led to an attempted murder. Do you agree with them? You went to work for them knowing that their hate had led to this violence. Do you agree with that or not?
I went to work for the SPLC to help lead its voting rights practice group, and that is
Do
the
you
work.
agree with your employer?
Senator, again,
So you're
am
going to
not
refuse to
familiar.
answer that?
Senator, again, I can't speak to work that I did not do.
You can say whether you agree with it or not, correct?
I cannot speak to work, Senator Cruz, that I did not do.
Do you agree with the statement the Family Research Council is equivalent to the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party? Yes or no?
I cannot speak to a statement wherein I played no role in the research or the writing
Why
or
not?
the publication because I did not, Senator Cruz, respectfully.
I didn't ask if you did it. You went to work for them. Do you agree with them? You're refusing to answer that. Let's move on. What is a white supremacist?
Senator, my general understanding is that a white supremacist is someone who hates people simply based on the color of their skin.
Okay, your current employer has labeled 3 members of this committee, myself, Senator Hawley, and Senator Blackburn, as white supremacists. Do you agree with that characterization?
Senator, I have never referred to you or any member of this committee
Has the
as
Southern
that way.
Poverty Law Center done so?
I'm not familiar with the exhaustive list of policymakers that might have been researched and profiled by another department within the organization that I'm
How many
not.
members of the United States Senate do you believe are white supremacists?
Senator, again, sitting here before you, I would not call any single member of Congress.
But you're
that
proud
way.
to work for an organization that does.
I'm proud to do voting rights work on behalf of an organization that provides pro bono counsel to individuals, especially low-income individuals.
So
living
let me
in the
ask you,
South.
how could anyone who is not on the radical left, how could someone who's pro-life, how could someone who's conservative, how can someone who's religious have any degree of confidence if they were to appear in a court with you as a judge? You've spent a lifetime working for groups that smear half this country as white supremacists and Klansmen. That is offensive. My dad came as an immigrant to this country from Cuba with nothing. That is hateful language. How could any litigant expect to get a fair shot if you were a judge, given your advocacy and history of extreme advocacy?
Because, Senator Cruz, my father came to this country with nothing in his pocket as well.
But why don't you give that grace to others?
I do, Senator. That's what my religious freedom, my free speech work, my voting rights work, my criminal justice work, Senator Cruz, all of that work that I've done represents my commitment to making sure that all people at least have equal access to justice and equal justice under law.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees, and thanks for being here. Ms. Abudu, if I could just start with you. You said to Senator Ossoff just a couple of minutes ago that you believe in the First Amendment, right?
Absolutely.
And you told him that you have litigated cases under the various clauses of the First Amendment, and you said that you think that free speech is essential. Is that right?
That is correct.
And freedom of thought is essential, you also said. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What about the right to counsel? Is that also essential?
The Sixth Amendment and the Supreme Court have said so.
So what would you think about your organization calling other members of the bar, saying that it is their goal, your organization's goal, to destroy other members of the bar who provide litigation, who provide counsel to indigent defendants? I'm thinking particularly of the Alliance Defending Freedom. Back in 2007, a senior fellow at your organization said in a speech that, "I want to say plainly, our aim in life is to destroy these groups," referring to the Alliance Defending Freedom and others. Just to be clear, these are groups that provide representation to indigent defendants and to other defendants, other plaintiffs, counsel, litigants. I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, to completely destroy them. To completely destroy them. Do you think that's appropriate rhetoric for someone to use about opposing counsel or a member of the bar? Do you think that's an appropriate goal to have?
Senator, I would first say that I'm not familiar even with the language that you just cited, but I will say that my work, again, and I stand on my record, is to ensure that all people have access to counsel to vindicate their rights.
Do you think that this is appropriate rhetoric from a senior fellow at your organization?
Senator, again, not having that language in front of me, not understanding the context, I can't even respond to that.
Oh, you can't say it's inappropriate?
Without more information, without
Really?
context, and without seeing it.
That's interesting. Now, you said to this committee repeatedly that all you do at the Southern Poverty Law Center is voting rights. That's not what you said in your questionnaire to the committee, though. You said that you oversee litigation related to hate groups. So let's talk a little bit more about hate groups, which apparently you oversee the litigation for. Is it your position that organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom are a hate group?
Senator, I would want to review that language because in
Which
terms of
which language?
regarding the overseeing the organization's research and profiling of hate groups, I don't work in that part of the.
Let me just quote for you. Further, as the Director for Strategic Litigation, I've taken on significant managerial responsibilities, including overseeing all of the organization's legal programmatic work, which in addition to voting rights includes immigrants' rights, criminal justice reform, children's rights, LGBTQ rights, and litigation related to hate groups.
Thank you for clarifying that it was our legal program.
Right.
And in terms of the cases that the organization has brought, it does include representing individuals who have been targeted on the internet, who have been harassed, whose family has been stalked in terms of, or because of their identity. In the one particular case, because of our client's identity as a member of the Jewish community. And we represented that woman successfully.
Yeah, but you say you oversee litigation related to hate groups. Your organization is infamous for designating anyone who disagrees with it as a hate group, trying to drive them from public life, and in the words of your own employees, trying to completely destroy them. Is that a record that you're proud of?
I am proud of our representation of that woman in that case who simply because of her Jewish heritage was targeted and stalked.
That's not what we're talking about. Let me ask you about the Southern Poverty Law Center more generally. What year did you join SPLC?
February 2021. I'm sorry, 2019.
2019. 2019 was the year that the SPLC paid $3.4 million in response to defamation lawsuits. 2019 was the year that Charity Watch gave your organization an F rating. The SPLC has been labeled by the left-wing policy journal Current Affairs as an outright fraud that uses willful deception designed to scare liberals into writing checks. The progressive journalist Alexander Cockburn said this about SPLC: I regard it, the Southern Poverty Law Center, collectively as one of the greatest frauds in American life. Liberal death penalty abolitionist Stephen Bright refused to accept an award named after the founder of the SPLC, saying in his words, the SPLC has long been run by a con man and a fraud. That's from a Harper's Magazine article. Also in 2019, SPLC employees told the press we were part of a con and we knew it. That's in a New Yorker article, not exactly a right-wing journal. Are you concerned by any of this record of the organization that you work for?
Senator, what I'm glad that I didn't hear in that litany is a complaint about the voting rights work that we've done, about the clients and the community.
Are you concerned that Charity Watch gave you an F, that you had to pay $3.4 million in response to defamation lawsuits, that you've been criticized, your organization's been criticized as a fraud and a con job, and that you work for an organization who says it's their goal in life to completely destroy their opponents? None of that gives you any pause.
Senator, again, my work with the Southern Poverty Law Center has been to uphold the constitutional rights of individuals who, without pro bono counsel, would not be even able to have access to justice.
I have to tell you, I find your answers absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I can't believe you've been nominated for this position. I can't believe that the President of the United States would nominate someone from this organization with this record. And I can't believe that you would sit here today and refuse to condemn this hateful, frankly, violent rhetoric from this organization with this record. It's astounding to me.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello again to both of you. thank you for your willingness to serve and to continue to serve. I would imagine that, like most Americans, you had a chance to observe, at least in part, the confirmation hearings this committee conducted last month when we had before us Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as a nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States. And I want to bring us back to one of the issues that I raised during her hearing, because I think it will continue to be important for me to consistently raise in this committee with other nominees that come through at all levels of the federal bench. I shared at the time that I've noticed that while diversity in who serves on the bench is critical for public confidence in the judicial system, and I think leads to better decision-making overall, that the concept shouldn't be just limited to who is sitting on the bench or who the judges are only. Judges maintain, as you both know, a full staff of courtroom personnel, from law clerks to who are able to use the credential of a clerkship as an early step up on the legal professional ladder, to many others who work in support. And as a result, when it comes to clerks in particular, ensuring that clerkship opportunities are extended to a diverse pool of applicants is not just the right thing to do, but also a critical step to ensuring the long-term diversity in the judiciary and the top ranks of the legal profession for those who don't end up serving on the bench, but rise in practice, rise in the firms that they work with, or just rise in terms of legal community leadership. So with that as the preface, I want to ask each of you, do you agree with the goal of diversifying the judiciary in so many ways? And if you agree in the added value of diversifying the law clerk pool. If you agree it's worthwhile, what steps can you speak to that you've taken in your past, or what steps you would take if confirmed to advance diversity?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. I certainly believe that diversity is very important because it allows for differing perspectives, backgrounds, geography. In my case, being from South Carolina to go to a national court, it also offers the opportunity for that public persistence in the confidence in the judicial system with a fair and impartial judiciary. But most importantly to me, it offers the opportunity for inclusion, for other people to have opportunities to have wonderful careers in the service of law, being on the judiciary, and a life of public service. I'm proud to say that I've had several clerks go on to the appellate courts, so I believe that that opportunity for inclusion does prevail.
And the only thing, Senator Padilla, that I would add to that is, for me, diversity is about inclusion. And that inclusion communicates that it is an environment and an opportunity for all people, regardless of their particular background, to be part of a system that is dedicated to upholding the fundamental principles of our great nation.
Thank you so much. Very, very well said. My next question is specifically for Ms. Abudu. You spent virtually your entire career as a civil rights lawyer. And in that capacity, across a number of organizations, a significant portion of your work has involved advocating for greater access to the ballot and defense of voting rights, both in court and in the public. As a former California chief elections officer, I know how important advocacy on behalf of the right to vote is. And we should all agree that our democracy is strongest when every eligible citizen is able to easily, conveniently register to vote, cast their ballot, and have their vote counted in elections. So, Mr. Abudu, just want to offer you a minute to comment as to why you've dedicated so much of your life, not just your career, but your life, to the defense of voting rights.
Thank you, Senator. The Supreme Court has held that the right to vote is preservative of all rights. And I have interpreted that to mean that the ability to vote, the ability to have your voice heard through the ballot box is the entry point for making sure that individuals in our country are able to influence the policies that dictate their lives. That is why voting rights is so important, and that is why, Senator, I've dedicated a good portion of my career so far to that area of the law.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Padilla. I want to thank both nominees in this first panel for their testimony. There may be some written questions coming your way. I hope you'll respond to them in a timely fashion. But thank you for joining us today, and you're now permitted to leave. Now I'll call up the second panel, which consists of Judge Alba, Ms. Chowdhury, Ms. Merle. We could ask the first group to take to the hallway. Thank you very much. Thank you. If I could ask the panel to raise their right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Let the record reflect that the members of the panel all answered in the affirmative. And we are now going to recognize them in somewhat alphabetical order. Is it Chowdhury or Chaudhry?
It's Chaudhry, Senator.
Chaudhry, okay. So we'll forget that you and welcome Ms. Chaudhry to be the first. You have 5 minutes to say a few words and introduce those who've joined you.
Good morning, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and the committee. My name is Nusrat Chaudhry, and I thank the committee for considering my nomination. I thank President Biden for this extraordinary opportunity. And I thank Majority Leader Schumer and Senator Gillibrand for their support, and the Majority Leader for his kind introduction. With me today are people who mean the world to me. My husband, Mike Early, without whose love and support I simply would not be here. My brothers, Arif and Saif Chaudhry. And of course, my mother, Nafisa Chaudhry, who has given me more than I could ever describe in words. My late father, Dr. Nura Rahman Chaudhry, is also watching over us. Both of my parents were born in what was once British India and is now the country of Bangladesh. In 1957, my father won a Fulbright grant, and he used it to travel to the United States, where he worked for nearly 40 years as a physician, serving Chicago's diverse communities, including U.S. veterans. He was joined by my mother, and together they modeled community service, made sacrifices for family, and taught me that with education, hard work, and faith in God, in America, anything is possible. I also thank Judge Barrington Parker of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals and Judge Denise Cote of the Southern District of New York for their extraordinary mentorship, and my family, friends, and colleagues across the world for their support. For nearly 14 years, I have represented my clients, U.S. veterans and other Americans who could not afford an attorney so they could have their day in court. It would be the honor of my life now to serve my country as a federal judge. Thank you to the committee, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chaudhry. Judge Alba.
Thank you, Chair Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all of the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee for holding today's hearing. I would also like to thank my home state Senators Feinstein and Padilla for their support and President Biden for this nomination. To say that I am humbled to be here would be an understatement. I am the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. I spent my childhood toiling alongside my parents and brothers in the fields of California's Central Valley. My parents immigrated to the United States, bringing with them entrenched values of honesty, humility, hard work, and determination to ensure that their children received a good education. My mother was particularly passionate that we become respectful, responsible, well-educated adults. Although the 6 of us lived in less than ideal conditions, my mother ensured that we went to school having had a good night's sleep, a hearty breakfast, and wearing freshly washed and ironed clothes. I later learned that this was her way of letting our teachers know that even though she could not help us with our homework or volunteer in the classroom, we were not alone. My mother's love was there through every starched crease, reminding us to work hard so that we could build a better life. I have 3 wonderful older brothers who have been my greatest cheerleaders. Joining me today is the oldest of the 3, Fernando, along with my wonderful sister-in-law, Ceci, and their 2 boys. Thank you for making the trek all the way from California to support me. And thank you also to my 2 other brothers who have logged on to watch. Also joining me in person is my remarkable daughter, who makes me proud every single day. I love you, Bear, and I hope to make you proud today. Finally, I would like to thank the many people who have reached out with kind words of support and encouragement. I feel all of you here with me today. Thank you, Senators. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Merle?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am honored to be here today, and I would like to start by thanking you, Chair Durbin, for scheduling this hearing, as well as Ranking Member Grassley and the entire committee. I am grateful to my home state senators, Senator Schumer and Gillibrand, for their support, and I would like to thank Senator Gillibrand for her incredibly kind remarks this morning. I am especially grateful to President Biden for the honor of this nomination. There are family and friends across the country supporting me today, too many to name, but I must acknowledge at least a few of those without whom I would not be sitting here today. First, my mother, Imelda Shirlita Merle, who traveled from my childhood home state of Texas to be here. She spent her entire career as a nurse, helping those who need it most. She was my first study partner. As a small child, I would quiz her before her nursing school exams, and in return, she reviewed my science homework. She taught me the value of hard work, integrity, and public service. My sister, Renee Elisa Merle, who was my first teacher and my first role model, she's here with me today. And she never lets me forget that she was the one that taught me how to read. And in the process, she instilled in me my love for reading and learning. My brother, Andre Luis Merle, who committed his life to serving our country in the Army, he is cheering me on from Texas, supporting me as he has always done. And last but not least, Mark Anthony Wilson, my husband of 1 year next month. He is my best friend and the most insightful person that I know. I'm eternally grateful to have such a special person in my life. I also want to honor my father, Ronaldo Luis Merle, who passed away many years ago. His belief in me was unwavering. And if he were here today, this would undoubtedly be one of the proudest days of his life. I must thank my professional family and colleagues, many of whom are likely watching right now, who commit themselves every day to seeking justice for our clients through the legal system and upholding the rule of law. I am grateful to have worked alongside them. This country has given me much to be grateful for. I sit here today, a child of immigrants and the first attorney in my family, a career that has allowed me to serve others through the legal system. It would be an honor of a lifetime to serve my country as a federal district court judge. Thank you for considering my nomination, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Merle. And Ms. Chaudhry, let me start with you. You heard the earlier questioning of the first panel and the question of advocacy, which has been a big part of your life and your work as an attorney, professional attorney, and what impact that might have on you as service as a district court judge. Would you like to comment your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Senator. I understand the fundamentally different role between an advocate and a judge. I started my career as a law clerk to 2 federal judges and saw what it means to look and consider cases impartially and neutrally and fairly. As an advocate, I have zealously represented the interests and legal positions of my clients, which I am obligated to do. It is part of my ethical duties. But I now am ready to serve as a judge. And what a judge does is look at each case, one at a time, with an open mind, open to being persuaded by the parties, looking scrupulously at the factual record, comprehensively researching the law, and applying precedent. In my case, it would be Supreme Court and Second Circuit precedent to reach a decision that is compelled by the law. And that is the oath that I would take if I'm so fortunate as to be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Ms. Merle, the issue of racism comes up in this committee room regularly. Whether it exists, and there are those who question it as to whether it exists, whether it is systemic in America, and how it should be taught to our children. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, before this committee just a few weeks ago, was quizzed by several members on critical race theory. I'm at a loss to define that term. It's rather new, and I've heard a lot of different variations on the theme, and she said she never relied on it for any decision-making. But I would like you to address the one case that you briefed to the Supreme Court, Buck versus Davis, because I thought it gave an interesting insight into the issue of racism in current court cases.
Thank you for the question, Chair Durbin. And you invoked Justice Thurgood Marshall earlier, so I must note that LDF, in representing our criminal clients, we follow in his footsteps, and we keep an eye towards taking cases where we can address discrimination in the criminal justice system. In Mr. Buck's case in particular, Mr. Buck was convicted and sentenced to death after his own trial attorney presented expert testimony that Mr. Buck was more likely to be dangerous in the future because he is Black. That question of future dangerousness, was a central question for the jury in determining his sentence. The Legal Defense Fund represented Mr. Buck, challenging his sentence, questioning whether his sentence met basic constitutional requirements. The Supreme Court, in a 6-2 decision, held that it did not, that Mr. Buck had been denied his Sixth Amendment right to counsel. The court also reaffirmed the fundamental premise in our country that we are not sentenced for who we are, but for what we do. And that such racial stereotype, which infected Mr. Buck's case, that even in small doses, it could be pernicious.
And you virtually quoted the Chief Justice in that case, done your homework for this hearing. He said, "This is a disturbing departure from a basic premise of our criminal justice system. Our law punishes people for what they do, not who they are," which I think gets down to the heart of the matter. May I ask you, Ms. Chaudhry, you were also involved in the consent decree with the Chicago Police Department. Tell us a little bit about your role and what you learned in that experience.
Thank you, Senator. I serve as counsel to the ACLU of Illinois and other community organizations enforcing a consent decree governing systemic reform of the Chicago Police Department. That consent decree was entered into by the department and the Illinois Attorney General after the findings of the Department of Justice that the department had engaged in a pattern and practice of excessive force against communities of color, as well as incidents of overt racial discrimination that were unaddressed by supervisors. In my role, I have collaborated with other counsel in the case, as well as the parties and the police, to help bring about more constitutional and effective policing, including in the area of ensuring peaceful protest and expressions of speech in the city of Chicago. And so in that effort, what I seek to do on behalf of my clients as counsel is to advance constitutional, effective, and safe policing, including supports for officer mental health and wellness.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chaudhry. And I'll turn it over to Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Merle, I'm looking at an article you wrote in The Breach in 2017. You said, I'm going to quote, it's inconsistent to denounce white supremacy but not repudiate voter ID laws. Did you say that?
Thank you for the questions, Senator.
You're welcome.
I believe that was an interview I gave in the days after Charlottesville,
Right.
and I believe those statements were it was in my role as an advocate regarding my work representing voters in Alabama challenging.
So you didn't mean them as a person?
I made them in my role as an
Do
advocate.
you mean them as a person? I'm not asking you in your role as an advocate. Do you believe that if you're against white supremacy, you have to be against voter ID laws?
Senator, in my role as an advocate, I have.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about this. It wasn't the case. I'm asking you what you believe, and I don't appreciate you dodging my question. Now, this is a serious position you've been nominated for. Do you believe that someone who is against white supremacy also has to be against voter ID laws?
Senator, no. The Supreme Court has held that photo
What do
ID
you
law.
believe?
I believe that the Supreme Court has held
What
that
do you believe personally?
I believe that photo ID laws have been held to be constitutional.
Do you think voter ID laws are appropriate or inappropriate?
I believe those are questions that election officials.
Do you believe that voter ID laws are appropriate or inappropriate?
I believe that photo ID laws have been held to be constitutional. I believe there are cases in which
What
they
do
are.
you believe?
I believe there are cases in which they are
What do
appropriate.
you believe?
I also believe there are cases
What do you
in
believe?
which they can.
What do you believe? Do you
Senator,
believe?
let her answer, please.
I'm trying to. We both know what's
Needs
going on,
to-
Mr. Chairman.
Let her complete the
Why,
sentence.
well, let me do my own questioning, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your help, Professor. Do you believe that voter IDs laws are appropriate or not?
I believe there are circumstances where photo ID laws can be constitutionally implemented. And I believe that the Supreme Court has also held that there are circumstances when they would not be constitutionally permitted.
Okay. All right, Ms. Chaudhry. Am I saying your name right?
It is Chaudhry.
Chaudhry. Thank you for correcting me.
Thank you.
In 2015, you were on a panel at Princeton University. You said that the killing of unarmed black men by police happens every day in America. Did you say that?
Senator, I don't recall a statement, but it is something I may have said in that context.
You think it happens every single day?
Senator, I believe in that statement, I was making a comment in my role as an advocate, and I was engaging in rhetorical advocacy, which
But do you
advocates
believe
do.
that police officers kill unarmed black men every day in America?
Senator, I believe the killing of unarmed citizens by law enforcement is tragic, and I believe in that
I
instance
think it's tragic too, but do you believe, this is a really simple question, Counselor, do you believe that cops kill unarmed black men in America every single day? You said it at Princeton.
Senator, I said it in my role as an advocate.
Oh, okay, you didn't mean it.
Senator, I said it in my role as an advocate to make a rhetorical point.
So when you say something that's incorrect, it's okay to excuse it by saying, oh, I was being an advocate? What do you believe? Do you personally believe that cops kill unarmed black men every single day in America?
Senator, I believe law enforcement have an important and challenging job in this country.
That's not what you said, though, Counselor.
Senator, I say before you here today that I do believe law enforcement have a difficult and challenging job, and I also understand the difference
I just
between...
think that's an extraordinary statement to make with no data to back up. None whatsoever. There's no basis for you saying that. And you knew it then and you know it now. How can one possibly believe that you're going to be unbiased on the federal bench?
Senator, I believe my record shows that I have worked collaboratively with law enforcement in Boston, Chicago, Mississippi, and Milwaukee to solve complex problems to promote constitutional, effective, and safe
Your record
policing.
shows that you believe cops are guilty until proven innocent. Your record shows that if a cop, if a cop shoots a criminal, it's the cop's fault. And if a criminal shoots a cop, it's the gun's fault. I've read your record. I've read your record, Ms. Merle, and I don't appreciate you not answering the question straight up. I would respect you a lot more if you'd just tell us what you believe and not try to hide it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to again point out this incredible moment in American history. There's just never been a day like this in all of America, where we've had two panels that represent such extraordinary diversity. Frankly, two panels of women who are bringing to the federal judiciary, or potentially bringing to the federal judiciary, such profound diversity. And I am excited. Ms. Chowdhury, I am extraordinarily excited to see you. I had the privilege of recommending to the president the first ever Muslim judge, and now I get to see the second ever Muslim judge potentially, who is also the first ever female, and that is just truly worthy of celebration and rejoicing. Ms. Merle, you're making my friend cry over to your left, and I wish you would refrain from bringing her to tears anymore in this proceeding. Could you try that? Okay. All right. So let me jump right in, Ms. Chowdhury, back to you. I think it's, and this is me speaking, I'm not asking you to even comment on this, but I think we have a crisis in America that African Americans are more than 3 times more likely to be shot by the police than white Americans. And the cases are troubling and hurtful. And not just to black Americans, they're hurtful to all Americans. In fact, I would venture to guess that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle feel that this is problematic. And I've had some courageous statements said by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle as well. People with mental illness are 12 times, if I have my data right, more likely to be shot by the police. And that should generate the same kind of outrage. But talking to those issues, even passionately, does not in any way mean that you don't support the police and don't see the urgent need for them. And you said a few moments ago, and I'm not sure if it got through, but I want to, again, just this time I am asking you a question. Would you please affirm that your support of policing the United States of America?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Public safety is deeply important, and I do believe law enforcement have a challenging and important job. And as I mentioned earlier, I have worked closely with law enforcement in cities like Boston, in Biloxi, Mississippi, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Chicago to solve these complicated problems and to advance constitutional and effective policing, whether it was through settling major litigation concerning Milwaukee's stop and frisk program, to, I believe, mutual good ends and for the benefit of both officers as well as
I think you're humble. You say mutually good ends. I think you've done extraordinary work. I'm familiar with your record in that space. And you've served law enforcement and communities. And many Americans don't know this. I don't know if you know this, but the majority of people murdered in the United States are black men. Are you aware of that? Yeah. And communities like the one I live in, which is majority minority, they really want police protection, right? Yes, thank you. You know that. Ms. Merle.
Good afternoon, Senator.
You have to hold true to what I said. Don't make my friend cry, okay? You've dedicated your life to doing the kind of work that doesn't really bring a lot of resources. You're not getting a lot of, you didn't go into law to make money, did you?
I did not.
You had options to do a lot more, right? To make a lot more money put before you, correct?
That's correct.
But you chose instead a career that isn't a traditional pathway to the federal bench. It isn't a traditional pathway to great resources. Why do you do what you do? Why have you done what you've done, rather?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I think the bottom line is because I love this country, because I love the ideals of what it stands for. I believe in the rule of law and want to ensure that equal justice applies for everyone, that everyone has the benefit of equal justice.
Thank you. That is a profound statement. You love your country. You believe in the hope of America. You believe in the promise of the legal system. And I'm excited about the prospect of you being a federal judge. Ms. Alba, I have to be careful now because I'm sitting next to the guy that introduced you, and he intimidates me. But I just want to ask you the same question before I conclude. You've had a lot of options in your life, and you seem to have chosen a path of public service. Can you speak to that for a moment for me?
Yes, thank you, Senator Booker. I did. I was very fortunate, as I mentioned in my opening statement. I come from parents who raised us with core values of humility, honesty, hard work, and I brought those with me. I could have stayed in the Bay Area. I could have had a job that was more profitable, but I wanted to come home. I wanted to go back to the Central Valley. I wanted to do work that would help bring equality and justice to my community there. And I was very fortunate to be at a firm that allowed me to do that, as well as do some just great work, not just on behalf of people, but I worked for companies, I represented banks, I represented corporations. I got to do the gamut of all of it, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, you are a credit to your community, and your loyalty to that community is extraordinary. You are your ancestors' wildest dreams, you know that. And I will conclude by saying a few statements that I know have never before been said in a hearing, but con la ayuda de Dios, Bizrat Hashem, Insha'Allah, God willing, the three of you, with the help of God, will be federal judges. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chaudhry, I'd like to start with you. Last year, you sent a letter to the Chicago Police Department criticizing the use of foot pursuits, describing them as unacceptably, needlessly dangerous. If you're opposed to foot pursuits, how are police supposed to pursue someone who is fleeing under circumstances where pursuit is warranted? Are you okay with car pursuits, bike pursuits, pursuits on horseback, or is the idea that they can't pursue at all?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The letter that I sent as counsel to organizations enforcing a consent decree against Chicago police did not oppose foot pursuits per se. They were concerned about the lack of any policy by the Chicago Police Department to curb dangerous and unnecessary foot pursuits. When a first of its kind policy was promulgated in June, we made recommendations for how to improve that policy to curb that practice. And I will give some further context that in 2017, the Department of Justice, in finding that the Chicago Police Department had a pattern of excessive force against communities of color, noted that dangerous and unnecessary foot pursuits, in the Department of Justice's words, was part of the problem.
Okay, so you're not opposed to foot pursuits overall?
That is correct, Senator.
In the letter, pages 5 to 6 of the letter, you seem to suggest that they shouldn't have them at all if the person being chased suffers from a behavioral health crisis, including someone with mental illness. I assume that's difficult for police to ascertain in the moment, but I was just curious about that. Let me speak next to a tweet that you sent out a few years ago. No, this one was not a tweet. You, while participating in a panel called Resistance and Liberation, you suggested that a judge made a decision in a particular case involving an immigration policy developed by the Trump administration because he, quote, heard the 1,000 protesters on the street saying, "Let him in, judges here," you said. Should judges be influenced by people protesting?
Thank you for the question, Senator. In my view, judges should not be influenced by people protesting. I do believe that what you're referencing is a tweet that I made at one point, trying to motivate people at the time to engage in their First Amendment right to freedom of expression, which I felt was important in my role as an advocate at the ACLU. Yeah,
but it seems to me that you were suggesting that a judge made the decision based on that. You said the judge heard 1,000 protesters speaking, judges here. Does that suggest that you have confirmed as a federal district judge would be influenced by people speaking if they were sufficiently loud, numerous, or articulate, eloquent?
Senator, I would not. I believe judges focus on the facts and the law, and as I mentioned earlier, I believe it is critical for judges to have an open mind with respect to each case, to scrupulously review the factual record, and to research the applicable law and ensure that they are following binding precedent of their circuit and the Supreme Court in order to reach a decision that is compelled by the law.
In 2017, you spoke out about a change in policy by the U.S. Department of Justice, a policy regarding court fine and fee payments. And in response to it, you said that the, quote, the federal government doesn't care about civil rights law when it comes to protecting poor people. What did you mean by that?
Senator, I believe you're referencing potentially a blog that I wrote concerning the Department of Justice's decision in 2017 to withdraw an earlier guidance the department had issued to state court leaders around the country, reminding them of Supreme Court precedents that guard against incarceration for poverty. This includes Bearden versus Georgia, Griffin versus Illinois, and other precedents. In my role as an advocate, I've represented ACLU clients in challenging practices where people have been unlawfully jailed because of their poverty in violation of those precedents. And in my role as an advocate, I was concerned that the Department of Justice was signaling to state court leaders that they no longer needed to adhere to those precedents.
In 2018, you signed a letter as a former classmate of Senator Josh Hawley, who was then on the ballot in his campaign for the United States Senate. You signed it with some classmates from Yale Law School. In that letter, you and the other signatories say that, you quote, no, it's not our job to tell Missourians how to vote, but we do believe Missourians deserve to know that Josh is lying to you. The letter suggests that Senator Hawley is, as you describe him, a quote unquote coastal elite, an interesting accusation coming from a group of Yale Law School alums, and accused him of quote dishonesty that quote goes beyond just a phony story that he's telling about himself. And then it adds that quote, for all the 15 years that many of us have known Josh, if such a thing exists, it is also exactly who he has been, a coastal elite climbing a political ladder. Have you ever written a letter like that in response to any other classmates who do share your political views or your party affiliation?
Senator, thank you for the opportunity to address this issue. I did not draft, but I co-signed the letter that you reference, and I regret its tone, and I apologize to Senator Hawley and this committee for its overheated language. And that is not reflective of how I've conducted myself over 16 years in representing Americans who can't afford counsel in their constitutional rights cases, and it does not reflect how I will conduct myself going forward if I am so fortunate as to be confirmed.
Mr. Chairman, just brief follow-up on that. I appreciate that. I respect those who are willing to apologize. But I assume you did read the letter before you signed it. You didn't draft it. When you say I regret its tone, I mean that tone isn't great. I mean the tone's awful, but it's not the biggest problem with it. Are you disclaiming the factual assertions you made in the letter? Calling Senator Josh Hawley a liar?
Senator, I regret both the tone and the overheated language, which was overheated language in the moment, and I apologize for signing it.
But the underlying factual assertion is what I'm asking you about.
And that is overheated language that was engaged in the moment, and I apologize for that, as I mentioned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Lee. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Alba, welcome. Take a deep breath. You're good. So proud of you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question, but the lead up to the question is this. I mean, I've heard from you directly prior to the hearing when you speak with pride about growing up in the Central Valley, proud daughter of farm workers, having watched your parents work hard, some of America's hardest labor, essential work, according to the federal government, and how that's motivated you in your life and in your career. You've also shared, in a brutally honest and necessary way, some of the injustice that your parents and your family, your community has faced. So just wanted to see if you'd take a minute to share a bit more about that life experience and how that has motivated you to pursue a legal career and how it informs the work you do and how that would inform your outlook from the bench in this capacity, should you be fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. As I mentioned at the onset, my parents were very big believers that we come to this country with humility, with honesty, that we work hard, that we ensure that we give, frankly, way more than we take. And we've done that. Our entire life has been about that. Some of the humble beginnings that you referenced, I did not sleep in a bed until I was 15. I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag in a tiny little house that had very questionable plumbing with 3 older brothers, my mom and my dad. At no point did we ever feel sorry for ourselves or feel like, man, we have not had the best of luck. We worked hard, very hard. That meant all of us working in the fields. That meant my mother and I on school breaks going and cleaning houses. That meant knowing that at the end of the day, we had each other, and that's all we needed. We could have had the tiny house. We could have had, a car that never really ran well. We could have had to, put our money together and almost shed a tear if we got a flat tire, because that meant we didn't eat that week because the money had to go towards getting a new tire. But at the end of the day, that grit, that sense of we work hard. We don't apologize for that. We bring more than we take. And that is something that I always have done in my in any job I've had. Actually, I've been working since I was 6. And so as a law firm attorney, I always did that. I always, billed more than I was required to bill. As a judge on the Fresno Superior Court bench, I handled a very high volume misdemeanor calendar, and I did so efficiently, especially in light of the fact that I had no prior experience in criminal law. I worked nights and weekends to get up to speed to make sure that I understood what the questions were that were going to be before me. I currently sit in a juvenile justice position, and it's the same thing. I'd never had juvenile justice experience before, and I spent nights and weekends getting up to speed with respect to how that area of law works, what works with juveniles versus what we were doing with adults in misdemeanor cases. And so I do all of that with the idea that if I am also fortunate enough to be confirmed to the federal bench, I would bring that with me. That idea that I'm kind of comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? I'm used to being the outsider. I'm used to not having, the 3rd or 4th generation of, family in that particular profession.
And tell me if this sounds familiar, because my mom used to tell my brother and my sister, I always, despite the odds, despite how tough times were, siempre con la frente en alto.
Yes.
Always with your head up.
Held high.
Right? Don't bow down. Circumstances may be challenging, but we do the work, we do it respectfully, do it properly, and take pride in it. So appreciate the spirit that you bring to the judiciary. And just one more question, maybe a speed round for all 3 of you. I'm hoping you heard me ask this in the prior panel. Really hoping you heard me ask this when soon-to-be Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was before us recently. But that is the value of diversity in the judiciary, not just in terms of who's sitting on the bench, but from a law clerk perspective. Do you agree, disagree, or how would you ensure that you contribute to increasing the diversity of the pool of clerks? Ms. Chaudhry, did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Happy to start. I know that the judges for whom I clerked were instrumental in my own life. One was a trailblazing judge on the Second Circuit who's African American. Another is a trailblazing judge who's a woman in the district court. And I have seen how they have extended their generosity and mentorship to others. And if I am even half as good as a mentor as they are, I will have done my duty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. I completely echo Ms. Chaudhry's comments. Diversity in the profession gives so much. It gives us confidence that we're being judged by people who understand all varied life experiences. It also helps, it's kind of cliche to say, but if you see it, you can be it. And so it gives you that feeling that one day a little girl from South Los Palos who slept on a floor till she was 15 could sit before the Senate Judiciary Committee and potentially become a federal judge. Thank you.
Ms. Merle.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with my fellow nominees. I would add my first clerkship was with Judge Robert Carter, who, before he was appointed to the bench in the Southern District of New York, was a trailblazer, a civil rights attorney, and he took on the role as a judge because of his love for the rule of law. He was impartial and fair to all litigants that came before him. And then I had the opportunity to clerk for a second judge in the Eastern District of New York, who has been such a mentor to me to this day. At my job as Deputy Director of Litigation, to many junior attorneys and interns, I always tell them that they should clerk. I'm always talking to interns and younger attorneys about the importance of clerking, the relationships you build, what you learn, and it's just it was great for me, and I think it would be great for anybody.
So thank you, all three of you. Mr. Chairman, diversity not in lieu of qualifications, but diversity as value added in addition to impeccable credentials and qualifications. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Padilla. I'd like to make 2 points. One is strictly technical. The questions for the record will be due to the nominees by 5 p.m. Wednesday, May 4th, and we hope you'll respond quickly if you receive those questions. And the second is personal. Along the lines that you just raised, I mentioned this to Senator Booker yesterday. I've been involved in politics a long time, my whole adult life, and I think I have pretty good judgment and pretty good understanding of what we do and say and the impact it has on people. But I was completely taken aback when I returned to Illinois over the last 2 weeks and saw the reaction to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's approval by this committee. It was something I didn't anticipate at all. People who came up to me and had a word about the inspiration it was to them. It is a reminder that though we meet in these committee rooms and often wonder whether anybody notices, people did notice, and they are going to notice this as well. In the 2.5 hours or so that we have met this morning and considered these 5 extraordinary women, we have said to people across America, this could be you. This is your chance too. And I think you all understand it. It's a fearsome burden for you to carry. But a president has decided that it's his priority. And he told me again yesterday how much of a priority it is. And it's our job to do it under circumstances which are challenging. 11 Democrats, 11 Republicans. But we have a record of 59 Article 3 judges already approved by the Senate and more to follow. It makes you understand that some of the drudgery of this job, and it's not all glamour, that some of the drudgery of this job is well worthwhile if we take one step closer to equal justice under the law. And with that, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.